So good afternoon, everybody, to our webinar entitled Digital Transformation in the Airline Industry, an experiential learning experience to aid your change journey. I am delighted to have with me a couple of my colleagues and friends, Nick Waters, Matt Stanton, and myself, obviously. And we're going to kick off with Nick talking about the airline industry and some of the changes it's been going through and some of the emerging business models. And then we'll hand over to Matt. We're talking about digital transformation, the why and the what. And then I'm going to do a quick demo of the simulation platform that supports the transformational journey that you can go on and the decisions that you need to make and how you learn experientially. We have some client case studies, and as we go through the webinar, if you have any burning questions, please use the chat function to allow to put some questions in. We're more than happy to answer them as we can go along. Without any further ado, Nick, can you hear me? And over to you.
I can, yeah. I shall just request remote control of that now. And just hello, everybody. It's a quick introduction to myself. My name's Nick Waters. I'm a current airline pilot in the UK with a large UK airline. I started off my career as a solicitor or a lawyer, as it's termed in the UK, working mostly in in-house roles. And as I graduated through that, I ended up in management positions in various companies, including being responsible for IT teams in a number of industries before moving into aviation. Going through business jet type businesses, corporate aviation, and latterly into the airline world. Completed my MBA just a few years ago, and that was really where the interest peaked in aviation business models and looking more closely at what's going on within the industry. So over the next 10 minutes or so, I'm just going to take you through a bit of an overview of the industry. I'm aware that not everybody on these webinars might be from the airline industry. It might be applicable to some other industries as well, especially the trends that we're seeing, which are quite global as well. So I shall just take myself off video, and then I can just crack on with the slides and give you a bit of information on the background. So just a bit of a snapshot of the backstory of the aviation industry. This is a really nice graph that I put up because it's got some interesting points in it. Over the last 20 years or so, and certainly within the last 10, the industry's benefited from consistently low fuel prices and GDP growth. World economies have been doing quite well over the last decade, and it's created favorable conditions for industry growth. The aviation industry has generally grown at a multiple of gross domestic product in the world. That little graph is interesting because it actually tracks passenger growth back from about it goes back to 1945, but it obviously took a few decades to gain any significant traction. But the little bumps that you see are from the oil crisis through to the Gulf crisis in the early 90s, 9/11, SARS, the financial crisis, and so on. And you can see, although they were major crises at the time, compared to COVID, which is the very right-hand side of the graph, they were relatively insignificant in terms of impact on the industry. Of course, some of these were localized. SARS was localized mostly in the Middle East and the Far East. 9/11 fundamentally affected the American market and the transatlantic market more. But COVID has obviously had a significant global impact on us. During that growth period, the most successful business models were generally the low-cost airlines, which had sprung up as a result of deregulation in various markets, the US in the 70s and European in the late 90s. They've been spearheaded by some quite public-facing entrepreneurs, such as Michael O'Leary, who from Ryanair, who we all know and love, Stelios from EasyJet, a chap called Tony Fernandez, who started AirAsia, which has grown to be one of the biggest low-cost carriers in Asia. And of course, we have super connectors such as Emirates, which have benefited from the long-term development plans of the Gulf states. So looking at the recovery so far, from the initial drop, we see that we are starting to recover from the low point of COVID in early 2020. Airline growth is measured in revenue passenger kilometres. And we can see compared to this time last year, we've got a growth level of 115%, but we're still only just over half February 2019 levels. Load factors, which are a measure of how full on average our aircraft are departing, is currently at 70%. So in 2019, it was 81%. So we're still lagging about 10, 11% behind pre-pandemic figures. And of course, this reflects that even though there are less flights still being scheduled, each flight is departing a little less full than it was pre-pandemic. So that's obviously going to have a knock-on pressure at the moment on margins and yield factors. North America and Europe are currently leading the domestic market recovery, and Europe and Latin America are leading the international market recovery. So just going on to have a look at some of the pressures that are developing on the industry at the moment. We've got quite a lot of pressures from multiple angles on the industry. COVID debt and lost revenue on balance sheets. So every industry was affected to a greater or lesser extent due to COVID, but obviously the travel industry suffered an almost universal shutdown. Globally, the industry lost $372 billion over the period. And although state aid was quite significant, a lot of it was in the form of repayable bonds or loans, or even equity stakes. So it hasn't been bailed out to the extent that figure initially looks like it has. We've got ongoing regional disruption from pandemics over in China, and obviously the regional conflict which is developing in Ukraine at the moment. Not having much of a global impact, but obviously having a quite significant regional impact. We've got a step change in business practices that have developed through the pandemic. So businesses are obviously more squeezed, and they'll be looking in more detail at business travel costs and ESG targets, environmental and social governance targets. This could significantly result in a loss of valuable business fares and reduces seat yield going forwards due to the loss of those increased business fares. We've got the threat of new entrants with no legacy debt. As we'll look at just on a subsequent slide, aviation always seems to attract new entrants, new entrepreneurs with backing. And if I just go back to the previous slide, they come in with a flexible, disruptive attitude with a low cost base, whereas existing airlines, especially through periods that we've just gone through, even the significant low-cost carriers will probably end up with slightly weakened balance sheets as a result of this. So it makes the industry a target for new entrants. Inflation, we all know about inflation rising, spiking energy costs, reduces customer spending power. Again, that's going to be further downward pressure on yields. And the energy cost is reflected in fuel prices, which I just put a little chart on the bottom there. You can see the effect of what's happening just literally in the last 6 months. Compared to the trend since 2015. And it's going to add $106 billion to industry costs in 22. Looking at likely trends going forwards, I think there'll be quite a significant amount of consolidation and merger activity. This usually follows a crisis. Air France and KLM following the 9/11 period. IAG, which is obviously the group including BA, Iberia, Eurowings, and so on, formed in 2011. We're now seeing further strides towards consolidation. Wizz Air recently made a bid for EasyJet a few months ago when the share price was depressed. Two of the major low-cost airlines in Europe, and one is obviously starting to make moves. And we have Frontier and JetBlue in the US, both look like they're entering a bidding war for an airline called Spirit, which is, again, another low-cost carrier. The European and the Asian markets are a little more fragmented. There's more carriers in these markets than there is in the American market, which is more mature. So this, again, will promote a wave towards consolidation and merger activity. Aviation always attracts entrepreneurs, as I mentioned before. to the low-cost model. There'll be an increase in incumbent failures due to debt and competition, and in turn, these new entrants will come in and replace them. We often see airlines that fail being respawned within 12 to 18 months with often the same management but new backers, and they're starting fresh with a clean sheet with usually slight tweaks to those models. Environmental pressures, we're seeing this already in, for example, the reduction of 4-engined aircraft, BA retiring their 747 fleet early. Lufthansa have consolidated, I think, 13 different types of aircraft down to 6 different types of aircraft. And everybody wants to operate the most efficient, most fuel efficient twin engine single or double aisle jets to drive that efficiency. There's a pivot towards the leisure travel market and the VFR market, which stands for visiting friends and relatives. As a global society, we generally want to go on holiday, we want to go and visit friends or relatives who may be living in other countries, and that tends to rebound first. And that's going to be the first sector to grow back, but some of that is going to have to replace lost business travel, and the reconfiguration of these aircraft is probably going to have to look towards greater economy provision and a lower cost base, because a big question for the airlines is how are they going to replace valuable revenue from lost business class fares. Just moving on to the next slide, which is just a couple of slides to finish off from an interesting couple of surveys that I came across. The IATA Business Confidence Survey, the International Air Transport Association. This is fairly recent. As you can see from the top few lines, basically if it's green, it's good. And towards January 2022, airlines are generally quite bullish about passenger demand coming back, but the weak points, which the red arrow points to, are passenger yields and cargo yields. So we're going to see some element of growth. Business is going to start coming back, but what price are we able to put on this business? And if we can't charge the prices that we were charging before, then what's going to give? Our cost base has got to be reduced, and we've got to be more efficient in what we do. And then the next slide is Aviation Strategy. Is a publication that I subscribe to, and it did a poll of all its members fairly recently. And I've just put a little snapshot in there of some of the information that came out. When do we expect global passenger traffic to recover? Well, 75% are expecting it to be 2024 or later. And when it does recover, the second graph, just to the right-hand side, shows a preponderance of the kind of split between it's going to rebound quickly and grow at a multiple of GDP like it did before, or it's going to be a slower growth phase and it's just going to grow at roughly the same rate as GDP. But I think most people think it's not going to grow certainly as quickly as it did over the previous decade. And some repeated trends in there from comments on the survey. Low-cost airlines, we're going to push to gain market share, and market for business travel has changed fundamentally, driven by those cost and those environmental and social factors. So what does this mean for us then? Just to wrap up and do a little bit of a summary. I think in the industry, competition is going to remain strong, particularly from the low-cost carriers and the ultra-low-cost carriers. Their business model is more relevant than ever, and they've always managed to take advantage and grow following a crisis such as this. For all airlines, and certainly the strategy that the LCCs employ, razor-sharp cost control, got to protect margins, especially for losing business travel and carrying that legacy or COVID debt on the balance sheet. Together with that, yield is going to be under pressure from lower spending power, whether from businesses or the leisure travel market. And the key that the low-cost airlines use is to leverage ancillary revenue and commission-generating partnerships, which can be responsible now for up to 45% of overall revenue in those operators. So unless you're the niche or the absolute cheapest, unless you've got a real protected position, the customer experience has to be easy, and efficiency needs to be a key driver to achieve those objectives. Don't give them reasons to go elsewhere. So that's just a little bit from me, just to finish off. Now I'd just like to pass you over to Matt, who's going to talk a bit further about some of the benefits and issues of digital transformation.
Hello. Matt, can you hear us?
Okay, good. That's probably better. Sorry.
Yeah, there you go. You're
yeah.
on.
Perfect. Okay, thanks for that overview, Nick. Sorry, my slides have got their own mind at the moment. So, like I say, thanks for that interesting overview of the data of the industry. So, yeah, my name's Matt Stanton. I've got a background in intelligent automation, customer strategy, customer experience, and wargaming, and I'm on behalf of a company, Knowledge Capital Partners, and we're a research and advisory firm in the field of intelligent automation, digital technologies, and we also provide tools to support their successful deployment of those technologies. So without further ado, let's start. So really, this sums up, as they say in the title, be careful what you're signing up to, particularly with digital transformation. So the idea is, what's the big campaign idea? His colleague on the opposite side saying, well, look, we're going to go digital. We're going to use Facebook, YouTube, a mobile app, Pinterest. And then, so what are we going to do in all these channels? And we'll guess, I don't really know, but we'll figure out later. And there lies some of the dilemmas regarding digital transformation. And what also is interesting is the different perspectives on digital transformation. It has a lot of different perspectives from different viewpoints and different people, whether that's a change in our operating model, whether that's to do with artificial intelligence, or let's say cloud computing. The best description that I've heard of digital transformation is the following. Digital transformation focuses on the whole organization and large-scale change. It sees the transformation of both the business strategy, activities, processes, competencies, models to fully leverage the capabilities and opportunities of digital technologies and their impact. And I think that nicely really sums up digital transformation. And a nice analogy for it comes from George Westerman from MIT, saying that when digital transformation is done right, it's really like a caterpillar turning to a butterfly. But when done wrong or incomplete, possibly, all you really get is a really fast caterpillar. So perhaps bear that in mind when you're obviously on the journey and looking at yourselves and your organization to start on the digital transformation journey. Now let's run through what I see as the four main areas of digital transformation. And first off is the process transformation. And I think a lot of you, particularly who are based within the airline industry, have done quite a bit of work on the process transformation. And that very much looks at re-engineering the business processes, specifically bringing operational efficiency, very important within the airline industry, as we've heard from Nick, and the rising fuel costs and cost drivers at the moment. The second part is the business model transformation. And this obviously has taken a lot of the news over the last few years. This is how businesses have looked to reinvent themselves and become disruptive companies. And there's some very good examples of this, whether it's a sort of a Netflix, a Uber, an Airbnb, who very much transforms their business model. The next one, which is possibly not so well known or so well appreciated, is one called domain transformation. And this is where new technologies have the ability to refine both either their products or their services and very much disrupt those industry boundaries. And here they're looking to explore these adjacent market positions. That's the AMP part, particularly against the sort of non-traditional competitors. So a good example here is very much the is Amazon Web Services, which currently is the largest cloud and computing infrastructure service provider in the world. In this sector, it was previously dominated, obviously, by high-profile companies such as Microsoft and IBM. And the fourth one is the cultural and organizational transformation. And a good example for this is someone like HubSpot, which does CRMs, and how this approaches very much its culture, uses this sort of almost as a product. And that's to say that the company is constantly looking to redefine its culture and better the employee experience within that. It's created a large sort of presentation known as the culture code, and within that it highlights things like values, being humble, being empathetic, and adaptable within it. So that, as the title says there, very much realigns the organization and its culture to its vision, its mission, and its core values. And we'll talk a little bit further on this important area in the next couple of slides. So what I want to just point out to you, of course, is that digital transformation is also not all about technology. And a survey in 2019 from directors and CEOs found that certainly the digital transformation risk was their number one concern. And worryingly, 70% of all digital transformation initiatives do not reach the goals. And they gave 5 key lessons out of that. And they're worth just to take on board here. Firstly, figure out your business strategy before you invest in anything. I think that's very much key. Leverage some insiders, particularly if any people within your organization has undergone a digital transformation journey before. Importantly, and we'll come back to this, design the customer experience from outside in. Recognize the employee's fear of being replaced. Automation does bring a fear with employees and the fear of redundancy. So obviously there needs to be some proper messaging around that to obviously allay employees' fear. And the fifth one was to bring a Silicon Valley startup culture inside the organization. So there were some of the takeaways there. And also in terms of critical success factors, I pulled up one from the Boston Consulting Group here for you. These are what they've done from their survey in terms of 6 successful factors of digital transformation, which you can see there. And I really want to I think put your attention to points 1 and 2, because in our research, certainly these 2 points are very important, particularly the integrate the strategy with a clear transformational goals is a key first critical success factor. And secondly is ensuring that the leadership commitment right from the top right through to middle management is very much committed to this journey. Far too often have we seen businesses and organizations trying to attempt to go through the journey of digital transformation when the leadership team is not on board, and that just really is failure in the making, really, on the start of that. So there's some critical success factors there from the Boston Consulting Group. So in terms of the opportunities in the airline industry, perhaps in 2022 and beyond, where do we see are the possible opportunities? And customer experience, I think, is certainly one of the key areas in which I think for the airline industry, they can certainly look, and it can be potentially a key differentiator. I'm very much looking at trying to develop a customer experience digital transformational roadmap would be a perfect start for a number of organizations to start with. And this would involve mapping out both the business model, the processes, the interactions with customers to see how that business could change, and really pulling the customers at the heart of that change. The next bit is very much around empowering employees, the talent and organization. I mean, particularly customer-facing staff are key drivers, I think, certainly for customer choice for different airline companies. And therefore, I think it's very important to have them empowered and motivated. So somewhat like the customers, you should spend some time to understand what is the employee experience within the organization and map out talent journeys for them as well. Obviously, becoming a data-powered enterprise can certainly help transform your products and services. And obviously, the continued focus to optimize operational efficiency will continue to be important, obviously, with all the cost all the cost factors within the industry piling up. So what I want to do is just give you some 5 ways forward and some of the lessons that we've learned from Knowledge Capital Partners. So the first one is really to listen to these technologies. And in our research, we've looked at over 1,000 cases in automation and digital transformation, both from a research and an advisory capacity. And I guess what we've learned is that you have to listen carefully to the technologies and where they're taking you. And we think there are currently 10 major technologies which are on your screen now, which we really feel that you need to think about moving forward. If some of you eagle-eyed are wondering where AI is, for instance, AI and cognitive automation is pulled under the automation of knowledge work. And obviously things are changing rapidly, and different technologies will be appearing, but these are certainly the 10 technologies that we feel that you need to keep a view of now and in the future. The second point is to establish digital competitive positioning. And this model, I think, done by Veal and Werner, published in 2018, is a very useful one to help you define very much the customer value proposition, building upon what the brand is around the trust and relationship with the customers. And then it goes on to understanding in terms of what the product is, how is it consumed, and very much the customer experience there in the middle in terms of how can we engage and improve the customer experience, and what particular digital platform could you have that enables that, and obviously how is it delivered both from an internal and external perspective. The third point is obviously from our research, we've also identified 7 key digital transformational capabilities. With this, we've also developed a benchmarking tool which helps where organizations lie on this using these 7 digital transformational capabilities relative in their sector and also to your competition. And as you can see, the 7 core capabilities are along the top there. And, they vary from things like strategy, planning, culture, program governance, the digital platform, change management, and measurement. And we believe that these 7 capabilities are key, and then within those we've got 28 skills which we can grade. If you're interested in an organization, we do offer a benchmarking tool, and happy to take any questions or follow up if you're interested in taking that. And the fourth takeaway from us is very much establishing a digital culture. And what we found is that successful companies, particularly enabling a digital culture, have these 4 qualities, and those include both impact, speed, openness, and autonomy are the 4 key qualities that successful companies possess. And finally, the 5th part of it is really to say that the whole digital transformation process can be seen as a change process that is required, and it's a holistic change process. And as you can see in this model, it's very much important to understand both the impact of technology, strategy, structure, and technologies on those processes as well. And this change process can take anywhere between 2 to 3 to 5 years. And what you have to remember is that it continues to be a continual process. So very much manage it as one of these organizational change processes. So that's our sort of 5 if you like, 5 lessons which we've had from our research. So in terms of my takeaway from my part of the talk is that, firstly, digital transformation is highly challenging. The failure rate is anywhere between 70 to 80%, depending upon the study. Secondly, the primary reason for failure generally in digital transformation is around cultural leadership challenging. And please don't forget the customer. The customer generally needs to be at the heart of any digital transformation plan. Thirdly, digital leaders in terms of companies generally stay ahead they get better results, better profits, and better return on investments relative to their competitors. And digital transformation will continue to be challenging for most organizations, and unlikely that most will be full digital businesses, certainly by 2025. We have some available publications which you can download, which is around digital transformation at our website. And obviously, if you're interested as well to see how advanced your organization is in the digital transformation journey, then you can obviously take our free survey as well, our pulse survey, which is at our website, which I've listed there. So that's all from my side. I'd now like to hand over to my colleague Kuldip, who's going to now give who's going to demonstrate a platform that he's developed that helps companies experience the journey of digital transformation through experimental learning. So I'll hand over to Kuldip now.
Thank you, Matt. Can you still hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Thank you for that, Matt, and thank you, Nick, for giving us some fantastic insights to what's happening in the airline industry post the pandemic. And thank you, Matt, for giving us that great overview on digital transformation. Just a little bit about me. I'm a digital and IT transformation specialist. I've been working in the public and private sector for over 26 years, I should say. Over the last 6 years, I've done a lot of leadership roles, leading technology and IT functions and transforming them to align to the business agenda for digital. And I set up IQS some 6 years ago with a primary focus of delivering strategic and tactical and operational change in organizations. And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a platform that we've developed, which tries to bridge the gap between the technology IT function and the business as an organization is going through digital change. The simulation platform was really developed with the aid of taking a cohort of people, typically the chief digital officer, chief information officer, and their teams on an away day to run through a game, which is done in a fun and competitive but safe environment, where they experience through a fictitious company building and transforming that company through gameplay. And through a cycle of consider, implement, observe, and review, and you can see the various screens in the simulation, and we will go and have a look at the platform, play a few rounds. You can experience some of the decisions that you need to make and the actions that you can take to optimize your company, in this case Global Air, in the market sector. So as we know, as Nick alluded to, the industry is going through significant change, and the low cost providers are going to probably have some competitive advantage, especially if they can enhance the customer experience for passengers and taking that market share away from the bigger providers. How do you then compete in that market? What are the things that can you do to change in your business model that allows you to be more efficient, more differentiated from your technology, and more streamlined to enhance that customer experience? And digital transformation is a path that you can tread on. And the simulation game and the platform that we developed allows you to experience that in a fun 4 or 5 hour session with your senior leadership team and below, to develop the key challenge, identify the key challenges you might have in your organization, but you do that through learning through a simulation game. And wouldn't it be great to be able to see what the future could look like before you've actually taken the decisions that you do, and establish what that roadmap for change that we talked about. Sorry, could we just make sure that if you're on mute, please? Thank you. Thank you. simulation game, actually, the transformation journey that we go through in the learning platform is all about making the right decisions. And typically, when you go on this type of transformation, you're going to have to be thinking about some technical organization decisions around what are your digital priorities, what do we solve first, how do we measure and progress and track performance, and what are the compromises that you're having to make, because you're always limited by resource, costs, budgets, and therefore carefully be thinking about where you have to invest. Obviously, in the platform, you can't simulate the culture of your organization, but what you can do is think about some of the people decisions and thinking about how you can get them to be thinking in a constant change mindset, thinking about how you can learn from failure, learn fast, and learn the lessons, and then move on quickly, and thinking about course correction. So that's about turning your organization from being immature, stabilizing it, then becoming more agile and being able to pivot, and bringing in some best practices as you go along. So that's the path and the decisions that you make in the game. So let's start looking at the game. In the game, you are the transformation director for Global Air. There's a leaderboard of 250 airlines. And remember, we used to do the simulation training in-house, in room, and we still do. But when the pandemic hit, we turned the simulation from a in-room game to a virtual, and this can be played virtually anywhere. It can be done in teams of 5, 10, 15, 20, and facilitated by trainers such as me. What you have to do in the game is basically improve the business performance of Global Air by enhancing its revenues, improving customer satisfaction, and improving the operating revenue line, as you can see in the operating margin. So you go through a cycle of understanding where you are, which is the consider phase, planning your strategic and operational maneuvers, enacting them, and then reflecting on the impact on business KPIs and IT KPIs of your strategic and operational changes, and then reconsidering what you should do next over 12 rounds, which is played over 3 to 5 hours with lots of interaction, lots of learning points, and lots of team building and bringing the cohort together to learn lessons learned as we go along. So as I said, in the game, you have to improve the delivery of existing services for Global Air, bringing in best practices like service management, agile, DevOps, reach top 50. Remember, there's 250 airlines in the simulation game. Your aim is to get in the top 50, and you're having to compete against your colleagues. So you have a leaderboard against the market, but there's also a leaderboard between your cohort that are playing the game. So let's just think about some of the KPIs that you'll see as I go into the platform. You'll be looking at increasing revenue and operating margin, which hopefully will drive customer experience increases. You're trying to reduce the revenue that you've got that you're losing through incidents, and bringing in new features and functions and releases of technology so that you get increase in benefits. So let's go and play the game. We'll play I'll take you through 2 or 3 rounds and just make sure you're familiar with it. Obviously, we can't play the full game, but certainly can do a quick demo so people get familiar with the look and feel in some rounds. Can I get a quick nod from either Nick or Matt to tell me that you can see the platform? Can Nick, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself, say yes. Can I just, Matt, could you just let me know if you can see the platform?
Yes, all good. Yeah.
Thank you. Just need the validation. So this is the front screen. There's 3 buttons here. There's the admin function, which is for me as a facilitator and a practitioner to kind of check where everybody is. There's a demo version, and we're going to press the full demo version. Here you can see that Global Air's performance is poor. Its operating margin is -3.2, poor customer experience, and lots of incidents per month, and lots of defects escaping from the services that it provides to its customers. I'm going to press the full play simulation. And what this is going to do, as you can imagine, when everybody plays the game, they make their own changes, and there's lots of permutations. So we have to cater for those permutations, and they have to get processed through the KPI. So there's lots of data and information that we've collected over 25 years of experience in the airline sector and industry that we use to demonstrate the impact of those changes that the individual playing the game goes through. And what I'm going to do, so in month one, we the team that are playing the game see month one being played out, and what we're going to see is a screen now which will show you the current state of global air in the market set. On the left hand side, you can see the leaderboard. You can see global air shooting down the leaderboard. They're going to be 250th. In the middle, what you can see is the live services that global air have at the moment: the front, middle, and back office technology systems and services, a customer experience score. You can see the infrastructure on the right hand side with the total volume of instance. You got a cloud and on-premise infrastructure, and you can see a little development pipeline. And 30 days have elapsed of month one. I'm going to go now show you the business and IT KPIs that show the performance and on the current state of global air. You'll see some plots here. You can see the operating margin for month one, which is -3.2, and the customer experience score, which I already mentioned. So what I'm going to quickly show you at the bottom, there's some business insights. And if I click on that, what that is telling you is what the customers and the key stakeholders in global air are experiencing and asking for global air to do. Remember, it's 250th in the leaderboard. The CEO is saying, we want our aim at the end of quarter one, which is 3 rounds of gameplay, and we're going to do 3 rounds, having done month one, round one. He would like them to be in the top 200 of the leaderboard, and he would also like the operating margin to be a positive one, turning it from about -3.2 to about 3.7. The chief operating finance officer supports the target to get the top 200 and wants to reduce the revenue that they're losing, for instance, down from 10 million a month to about 5.5. The marketing officer, the customers are saying there's a really poor experience with the online booking system, and the service desk is saying it's being really unreliable because we just don't know which critical services to focus their resources and efforts on. And there's some competitor analysis as well. That's the current so that's the current state, what the executive and stakeholders are asking for, and we've got a poor operating margin for global air. So for the next 2 rounds that I'm going to play out, I'm going to take everybody, I'm going to go on the path of maximum return and value and benefit for improvement and growth of global air. Now, in the game, if you were playing it, we would actually like you to make lots of mistakes. And by making mistakes and lots of different choices, you're going to learn rather than me taking you through the ideal path. But through the ideal path, you'll see the impact of those strategic maneuvers I'm going to now do for global air to improve its performance in the market and take it on that journey. So I'm going to quickly just show you on the bottom here, up on the leaderboard, is a whole bunch of things that you can do. If I open up these, I press the close strategy button. If you open the strategy panel, you can see all kind of live services. There's something like 50 to 80 live and new services that you can bring on board: accounting, baggage reconciliation, check-in, crew management, all sorts of services. Here's the analytics that show you the key market reports that you can develop and see on the performance of these services that global air have to its customers. And there's some practices and capabilities that you can bring to play. They are flow, or improving the flow of information through agile development, continuous development, deployment, introducing knowledge management. You can introduce quality plays around increasing test coverage, peer coverage, and test-driven development, and you can buy these. In the game, each round you have $100,000 to spend on your strategic changes. And each of those, as I showed you in the strategy panel, you can purchase those at that cost, at a particular cost. To understand, get a bit more information around global air and things that I would want to improve, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to service performance. In this tab, what you can see is all the services that global air provides to its customers. And I'm going to filter them. The reason I'm going to filter them, I want to see the most revenue generating service for customers. And what I can see is that it's the online booking system, but we also know from the feedback that the online booking system is not performing very well. Well, how do I know that? Well, the thing I'm going to do is I'm going to purchase the availability report, because that's going to tell me a little bit about how these services are performing. If I press that little button there, it allows me to purchase the availability report, $25,000. That gets deducted from my total. And what this is now, again, if I just filter according to revenue generation, this is telling me my online booking system should generate $180,000 per day. It's only generating 38,000 at an availability of 35%, which is not great. But that still isn't telling me what the real challenges or the issues or the root cause of the problems are with the online booking system and also the other platforms. And this is where you need to purchase your problem management report, which will also cost you 25,000. And what this tells you is why what the root cause of the problem is. In this case, it's a software problem. We need to upgrade that platform. So let's filter again on the most revenue generating services. You can see the online booking system has a software problem. So that's really getting to the root cause. And I've spent 50,000 on those two reports. And remember, in the game, you would have to go and identify these issues and the challenges, and we would help you navigate to get all that information and data. And remember, if you remember the talks that Matt was talking about, getting data, understanding the performance of your business, that's why data is so important, and why having dashboards which tell you where your performance and how you're trending is so key. And so if I then, from this, I can determine that I'm going to go to my open strategy panel, and I know that I'm going to try to go and fix if I look at all my services, one of the things I'm going to do is go and fix the online booking system. I'm going to scroll down. If I can grab hold of it on the online booking system, I'm going to open that service. I'm going to firstly make it a high priority, and I'm going to buy for 50,000. In fact, that spends all my 100,000. I'm going to make it high priority. The reason it's high priority is because it's most customer focused, centric, and it gives me a high customer experience score. So so I've upgraded that, and I'm also going to do some prioritization. And the reason I'm going to do some prioritization is because all the services that are should be generating $100,000 per month, I think should be high priority. So online booking, payments, for example, I'm going to make a high priority. Ticketing platform should be high priority. I'm going to make that high priority as well. Check-in should be of a high priority, and reservations as well. Get hold of reservations down here. That's a high priority. So I've made that, and you can also do that for services that are generating 50 to 100,000. You can make them medium. So I'm going to save that, and then I'm going to go save and play month 2. So by pressing this button, this is telling me the things that I'm going to upgrade the online booking system, and I've done some prioritization. And if I press play month 2, what's happening now is those strategic and operational changes I have chosen to improve the performance of global air are now running through the algorithms, through the various permutations. And it's hopefully what we'll be able to see is the impact on global air against its other competitors in the market industry, to see where it has gone up in the leaderboard or not, based on those changes I've made. because what we've really been focusing on is thinking about those services that are customer focused, customer centric, and give high experience scores. So we were 250th. Let's see where we go. We were up to 230. Remember, the target at the end of Q1, 3 rounds of gameplay, was to get in the top 200. So we are 210th. Let's review the KPIs for the business. Wow. Well, what can we see? The operating margin has gone from -3.2 to 2.5. To 2.5%. Our customer experience score is starting to go up. Our availability for our critical services has improved as we've upgraded the online booking system, and our mean time to restore at first and second line has gone down. So as you can see, those changes have been really beneficial for Global Air. And if I just quickly show you, we're in the leaderboard, we've gone from 250 to about 190th. I go back to reports, that's month 1 and 2 done. I'm going to play one more round. I'm going to go to service performance, and I'm going to see what you can see, that by upgrading the online booking system, is now 100% available. But there are other services that are pretty critical to the business, but we also know that they're not performing as they should do. So, for example, the payment system needs an application upgrade. For the ticketing platform needs some failover for disaster recovery, and the story goes on. There's lots of fixes still to do to improve, get the business stable, and then start thinking about introducing new services to give us some extra value to impact the business and the market sector, and using technology as the enabler. So I'm going to, again, armed with this information, the data, I'm going to upgrade the payments. I'm going to go to live services. I'm going to go to payments service, and I'm going to upgrade it from a software perspective. We're purchasing 50,000. Each round, your 100,000 gets refreshed. I've done that. And I'm also going to look at the hardware failover for the ticketing platform. Let's see if I can get to the ticketing platform, which is here. And then I'm going to buy a hardware failover fix at 50,000. That spent my 100,000. I'm going to save. I'm going to now have a look at, here's the things I'm asking you to do, and I'm going to play month 3. 3 rounds of month play is 1 quarter, 12 rounds equals 1 year. And what we're going to see is, where have we got to at the end of Q1 for Global Air in the airline industry, as we've been transforming it through stabilizing it with some upgrades that are customer centric and focused. And the simulation is hopefully going to give us some interesting insights. So let's see where we've got to at the end of month 3. Remember, the target at the end of Q1 or month 3 was to break into the top 200. We're still going in the right direction. There's less incidents, hopefully, as the days go by. We're broken in the top 200, which is fantastic. Let's have a look at the business KPIs and the IT KPIs. Remember, the target was to have an operating margin of plus 2.3%. We've got up to 4.7. You can see that trending. Our customer experience is going in the right direction as we reduce the revenue loss for incidents. Availability of our critical services is going up because we've been prioritizing investment in those critical services so that they're focused on giving significant impact to our end users and customers. The mean time to restore has dropped at level 2 and 1. Our instant handling costs are going down at first and second line because we're fixing things, and our number of incidents has dropped as well. And if you look at the lost opportunity because of those software upgrades, hardware fixes, and prioritization, the revenue that we're losing, for instance, is dropping month by month. And the story can go on for month 5, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We play 12 rounds of gameplay. What you will get, if I just show you at the bottom, it says strategy feedback. When you play the game, at the end of each round, You get some feedback in the simulation which tells you, did you play the right strategy? Was it the most optimal or not? So whilst as a facilitator, I would provide feedback. The simulation game does that. The other thing I would do at this stage is bring the team together that have been playing the game virtually to go through some learning points at end of quarter one. And those learning points typically are 3 or 4 things. One, how important it is to have strategic intent. If you remember, if we just look here in the business insights, the stakeholders has really rock solid business purpose and intent, and they were quantified. Those business objectives were quantified in terms of targets. So that was learning point 1. Learning point 2, how important it is to have dashboards such as these, which trend with data that tell you where your business is and where it's going. So purpose, point number 1 of learning. Point 2, learning the importance of having dashboards and data. Point number 3, how important is to focus on the critical systems and services that you provide to your customers, so that they are the ones that you put your resources and effort into. Learning point 4 is about getting to the root cause of incidents and problems so you can fix them at root cause level. And those are the kind of things that I would facilitate a discussion about when you bring the cohorts together after 3 rounds of gameplay to sort of discuss how does those learning points apply to the organization that you're working in. And you could take those as learning points to develop your strategic digital transformational change program. This learning goes on, as I said, quarter by quarter, round by round, and you get specific learning points from the strategies that you've implemented. I went on the best path. I've played this game many times, but actually when you make a choice, the impact on the KPIs are pretty evident, and you can see them going up or down and the learning associated with that. I'm going to just stop sharing and flick back to my presentation slides to just show you and to bring this all together a little bit. If you did the full 12 rounds, the KPIs trend something like that, i.e. you get improvement in margin, improvement in revenue, reduction in revenue loss for instance, and introducing new services, which we will do through an agile development way. Again, there's some learnings around that, around quality, improving flow and speed, and bringing in new services that in an agile way. There's some other particular strategic plays you can make in rounds 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. The capability progression, so those benefits around revenue and profitability for Global Air are only realized as you develop the capabilities in your organization. So you go from being an immature organization, stabilizing it, and then bringing in new services so that they become developed in an agile with high quality delivery of services. And you can see as month on month that revenue, as revenue increases, margin will increase. So to bring this together, earlier in the presentation, Nick talked about how can the sector will go through many mergers and acquisitions, potentially how low cost and ultra low cost providers will be eating away at the big providers. How can you as an airline provider re-enhance your business model, use technology as the enabler, use it as a way of bringing in efficiencies and cost savings, and how you need to transform your IT function to align to the business agenda around digital transformation and bringing in that customer-centric focus that Matt talked about a lot from a digital change perspective. And what the simulation training does, it takes you for an experiential learning experience through a fictitious company called Global Air to experience that in a 4 or 5 hour session with your cohorts and your team and your peers to bring out some learning about how you can go about that change journey. And it's done in a fun, safe, competitive environment without you making, which allows you to understand some of the decisions that you might want to make in your own organization and develop that strategic digital transformation roadmap. So the key business imperatives around customer centricity, being agile, speed to market, maintaining quality, reducing risk, becoming more effective and efficient, and being stable. At that point, I am conscious that we have come to the hour end, and I wanted to just bring in, open it up to any questions that anybody might have, or any final thoughts that anybody has around. I'm going to allow people to share, unmute themselves as well, and if there's any burning questions, please raise them now. Or some final thoughts from Matt and Nick.
Just to say that thanks everybody for attending. Contact details are up there if anybody thinks of anything they want to ask after the session. I think we recorded this, so it's going to be made available, isn't it, Kuldip?
Yep.
So you know, feel free to reach out to any of us, I think, if you've got any questions that crop up after.
No, great, and thanks both, and enjoyed that. And like I said, I think, you know, the opportunity, I think, for the industry is very much centered around putting the customer first and building all the technologies, process leadership around that. And I think that's the big opportunity, certainly for some of the airlines.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to just finally thank you again, Matt and Nick, and thank you for our audience for attending. There's our contact details. Wish you a happy and long weekend for wherever you might be.
Great.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.